Even on a football Monday with the Birds playing tonight, they cannot take away the shine of the fact that we are on a countdown 2 weeks away from the start of training camp. 10 more shows to go before we get there. And we have Kyle Neubeck back in the building this week. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers Podcast with Derek Bodner. I'm Devon Givens. Brianna's producing all of you in the chat, and Kyle is back. Great to have him back. What's going on, man?
Glad to be back in the regular swing of things after a rough last week. Derek apologized to me before the show and prior to that because I think he was confused at why I was out of the office.
I'm always confused, but I was also confused about this.
And he owes no apology for that. It was just a cross.
Well, I did tell you later.
You did, but like I said, my main apology was, first of all, I didn't reach out to him right away. But second of all, on our first show after when Kyle was not here, I basically told all of you, all the listeners, to bring the same energy at Kyle that they did towards me. I thought he was just out for being under the weather, so I do apologize for that.
No, so I'll just be completely transparent with everyone because I feel like I'm the heart on the sleeve guy of this show, and that's kind of my role, my job. I had a death in the family last week. We had lots of extended family in town that I was, because I'm local, the resident airport chauffeur to pick up my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, various family friends who were in town. And it was, thanks to these guys, thanks to the company for, showing me the grace and, just being here to do the show so that I could go and spend some time with my family, be there for my people. And I would like to think that's the type of culture we've created on the show, is to pick each other up when we all have our various problems, all that good stuff. The only other thing I would say on it, I don't do free promo on this show, and I make but there are a couple places I wanted to shout out. This isn't really, I don't think they'll ever advertise here, but thank you to the people at Pennsylvania Hospital at, I think it's 8th and Spruce, I want to say, near Washington Square. My aunt was there during her brief stay there last week. They did their best to give her the best care possible and were very gracious and good to my family. So thank you to them for being with us during a very trying time. And a local business I wanted to shout out. There is a restaurant near Washington Square called The Morris, and we stopped by there. I called literally like 2 minutes before we were to be there and said, hey, I have like 15 people. Are you guys equipped to absorb that? Granted, this is the night of the debate, right? So lots of stuff is closed. So everything's getting pushed further south into the city, away from the Constitution Center. Not only did they bring us in, seat us, take care of us, they were ultra hospitable and went above and beyond for us once they found out why we were there and why we were all together. So thank you to the Morris in the Washington Square neighborhood, the staff there. I believe the manager's name was Chris. Wanted to say thank you to him. And so we'll leave all that behind. I have my green Donate Life wristband. My aunt's kidneys, her lungs, and several other organs were donated to people who actually are now going to be able to live longer lives because she's an organ donor. So I would consider being an organ donor if you guys are not already, not to go too far down that road. And now we talk basketball. That's the last we got to say about it.
And I will say, first of all, Kyle, I think all of our hearts go out to you. We're very sorry for your loss. And if you are the wear your heart on a sleeve guy, I am the joke through the pain guy. So if Devon can take the first 3 months off to sip pina coladas on a beach, you can certainly take a couple days off to deal with any family things that come up.
Absolutely. Same reason I wear mine every day. Never told you guys about that, but same reason I wear mine every day. Same reason you wear yours.
And it was, my aunt was the glue of our family, like someone who always gave to others. So for her, essentially last act to give people more life and another chance at a longer life. I thought that was a very fitting tribute to her life. And so I was very proud that that's what she ended up doing.
Yes, absolutely. So we appreciate everybody for your comments, your well wishes, your condolences in the chat. We certainly did ours away from camera, of course, or for Kyle and the family. Great to have him back and take his mind off of things for
and
a
now
good
let's
hour.
say F the Celtics forever and talk about how they're probably going
what about the
repeat
Nuggets
as title winners. Well, we'll get to them. You know we'll get to
We'll
Denver.
get to them. So everybody, again, welcome to the PHLY Sixers Podcast. We're 2 weeks away. It's time to start previewing ahead of time some things that we need to focus on with the Philadelphia 76ers in their upcoming 24-25 campaign, where they are in the Eastern Conference. We've kind of talked about who we felt were the real contenders a few weeks back, where we started to look at the Eastern Conference and how they shaped up, what we felt the end of the year needed to be for you to feel the Sixers season was satisfactory going into the end of going into the summer, honestly, next summer of 25. But we wanted to start off this season preview beginning, Derek, by looking at the entire league. Our partner here at Bet365, you'll see them all over the place with Bet365 here on PHLY and our family, PHLY Sports, certainly with the Eagles and their postgame show. Make sure you're there for that a little bit later on after the Birds, pregame and postgame, after the Birds host the Falcons tonight. But, Derek, we looked at the odds, and the Sixers are right now, according to our friends at Bet365, have the third best odds in the NBA of winning the title for the 24-25 campaign. The Celtics are first. The Oklahoma City Thunder are second. And for them to actually, I looked at, there was a bonus. There was like a boost there at plus, I think it was, what did I say? Plus 900. I think I had it. Plus 900 for the Sixers to win the actual title this year. So wanted to get your thoughts on how high they were. We've compared them to the Knicks. We've looked at the Bucks and the Cavaliers, the Orlando Magic, Las Vegas, and Bet365. They look at them and they have the Sixers second in the East, third overall in the entire NBA.
Do you know the last time they were this high in title odds?
2001.
20. No, I don't. 21.
So they weren't this high. 2019-20 was their highest.
2019-20.
They were
That's right, because
they loved
there
that.
was a like basketball intelligence push for this team could be. And I would say I'm not gonna make fun of other people and not poke fun of myself. I feel like in our set there was like they could be the best defense in the league,
yes,
and they have cover for Joel, and we'll see how it works. And they got off to a good start, at least record wise. And the wheels just completely fell off. Yeah.
Now, they weren't third best odds. They were fifth best odds, but they were pretty much identical with the third best odds team. They were right in that mix. Their over-under for that year was 54.5.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, again, 50 is the standard. So we're just simply talking about a few extra ones that you're supposed to win along the way. Maybe win two more that you're not supposed to on the West Coast trip. That's really hard and daunting, and it's tough to win there. But 54.5 doesn't surprise me.
No, fifth best odds and basically tied for third best did surprise me a little bit. But then again, like Kyle said, a lot of people were high on that team, and I, myself included. Like, I was concerned about the offense, and you thought, well, they probably have to be the best defense in the league to have a shot, but they had the chance to be the best defense in the league. So anyway, not to go down a dark path, because we all know how that season turned out. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a little bit surprising, but not really. Like, this is a team that should be in the inner circle of title contenders.
Yep.
They're not necessarily a favorite, but in part because the Boston Celtics exist, and they brought back pretty much their entire staff, and in part because this not only this trio, but any of the individuals in the trio have never done it at that level. So they're not going to be the favorites, but it would have been pretty surprising if they weren't in the top five. And did you go over the entire top five yet?
I did not. Just the top three.
We don't need to do that now. But I think where they're placed is towards the high end of their range. But I think they should be somewhere in that 3 through 6 range. I think that is fair.
I would say this, looking at the five and the gap that I see at the top. Odds makers view this as it's the Celtics and then it's everybody else.
Yes.
Like it's pretty tight, right? Like from Oklahoma City in the second spot to Minnesota at 7, it's only a plus 250 difference, which is a 450 jump from the Thunder to the Celtics. And so the Celtics, having dominated most of the last regular season, they were basically unchallenged in the Eastern Conference playoffs for various reasons. I'd say most of them are health related, right? Like they didn't have to play a top end team because they were all battling with injuries throughout their series that they had. But then they, pretty easily won the finals. And they also have a team of guys where at least 2 to 3 of those guys are absolute prime age. Like this is the time to win. And Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have been the 2 main stars of that team for a long time. And they have pretty consistently been at least a conference finals team, if not a finals team. And so if you add all that up, it makes sense that they're the runaway favorite. There's no real reason right now to say, okay, this is why the Celtics are going to fall apart, other than you win one. And sometimes guys just get obsessed with like, well, I want more touches. I want this. I want that, because you've already reached the team goal. Now, how does it come back to me? Sure. But everybody got paid. It's like, it's hard to be like, oh, well, Drew Holiday's going to be looking out for himself when 1, he's not that type of player. And 2, he just got like $100 whatever million to be on this team for the next 4 years or so.
No, I mean, to your point, you were out like 3 days and I'm already like, I'm not getting enough screen time. I'm not being able to talk enough. That's the thing that happens to basketball players as well, for sure.
And look, with the Celtics, they should be the favorite. As Kyle and Derek just talked about, they should be the favorite. They are going to be that good. They want to come back, of course, and defend their crown. Then you have, if you believe in stuff like this, where you use motivation to make sure that you get things done. Kyle talked about the money part. Everybody's paid. Derek White is paid. All of them are paid. They're all good. Now, Derek White, they have to figure that out at some point, what they're going to do going forward. Kyle has some stuff he wanted to add on that a little bit later. But when you look at this team, and they look, as you all know, pros look for anything to use as their advantage as to how they get it done. Do they feel like they have been respected as the defending champions, the team that just won the championship? Probably not. Jaylen Brown is
even when they won the title, I don't think people were like lining up to coronate them.
Jaylen Brown has not taken off the championship hat since they won in June. He's still walking around wearing that 2024 NBA championship hat. He feels snubbed from what happened with Team USA, then going into the Nike part of it. Jason Tatum made the team and was still ticked off at Steve Kerr. So they're going to use every little morsel of motivation of trying to make sure that they prove themselves right. Joe Mazzulla seems like a maniac, like where it doesn't even matter to him that they won. In more
ways than one.
Right,
yeah,
right. So
good and derogatory.
Good, exactly. So they're going to do everything. So they should be up at the top. And as much as I hate them, we hate them, you hate them, the respect is there. The question is, when it comes to the Sixers, are they going to be able to take them down, unseat them as the top team in the Atlantic Division, #1, and then the top team in the Eastern Conference when it gets down to it? Are they good enough to take them like they did to a Game 7 2 seasons ago? This is a completely different team. And when they did with James Harden, we were a little surprised, but as the series was going on and after they stole that first game, we're like, okay, they can beat this team. Yeah. They did not. We know how it played out. But are they good enough based on the amount of talent that they have on this team, what Daryl Morey, Elton Brand in the front office put together? Nick Nurse, will talk about him as far as his coaching and where he ranks in the NBA as far as some publication had put him there. The Celtics are the team to beat, and they should be. The question again is, are the Sixers good enough? And we didn't even mention with the Jaylen Brown piece where there's so many different tentacles of why he's pissed off. He was so pissed off, he was mad that his teammate got the spot over him. Come on, man. Come on.
No, but I mean, going back to the point, like they won 64 games, first in offense,
64.
Third in defense, bringing all the key players back, and all of them, with the exception of Horford, pretty much in that window where they're not going to start declining. The only real
Drew on the older side, but he's still not like,
they don't rely on
he's
him
also
a ton,
less
though.
important than
they have enough cover.
Yeah.
If they were asking him to do more offensively, I'd be a little concerned. And he hasn't shown any signs of decline defensively. But they're all in that window where you expect them to maintain. So there's 2 things that would break them up. First of all, finances, which Kyle will get to probably in a minute. And the second is just, it's hard. It is hard to win an NBA title. It takes a level of detail and just being borderline crazy about your, going out and competing. It's just really hard to repeat.
Especially back, I was about to say.
And even really good teams, it is just like they have to dial it up so much, they can't slip at all. So if they end up not repeating, first of all, luck always plays a part in a 7-game series. and just complacency are your two biggest threats to them.
Absolutely.
So Derek mentioned the finances. We've been teasing this a little bit. I even saw it pop up in the chat. In the New York Post, I believe this was over the weekend. You guys are going to have to forgive me on when it came out because dates for the last week have been kind of irrelevant to me. But in the New York Post, there was a story from Josh Kosman. I hope I'm not mispronouncing that. Apologies to Josh.
And he's just sitting at home somewhere getting all pissed off.
And Brian Lewis, who the gist of their report was, so the Grousbecks own the Celtics. We've known for a while, it's been reported all throughout the summer, they're looking to sell the team. So further detail on this came from the New York Post, where they said Irving Grousbeck, who he's the father, he's 90 years old, he owns 20% of the team. The guy that you guys would have seen if you've seen, like, this is the Celtics owner, is his son Wick. So Irving apparently wants to sell the team because of these big contracts that are coming. And Wick is the one who has helped. He's more involved in the day-to-day, put together the roster, and was pushing back on, like, no, we need to bring everybody back. We have to really go for it, doing the John Middleton approach of just like, well, that's what the owner's here for. Like, give them money and we figure out the rest later. And so if I were trying to invent a way for the Celtics to stumble more than anybody would predict right now, outside of injuries, would be if they sputter in the opening months. And maybe it's because of that, hey, I want more touches, I want this. Maybe they just sputter for no reason at all. They shoot poorly. Kristaps is out for a while. And then you always have to think about, like, what is the owner thinking at any given time? That is a lot of what happens when you see a trade and you're like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Think about what the owner is going through at that very moment in time. And so if they get to, let's say, January, maybe even late December, and the Celtics team that won 64 games and won the title, that now is going to cost like $500 million in the future, if they're there and they're, like mid-pack in the East for whatever reason, then there are going to be some conversations at a high level. Like, look, I'm not saying they're certainly not trading Brown or Tatum, but one of these guys could turn into just a cap casualty, and we'll get into like the second apron concerns that every team has at this point. I don't think it's likely, right? Like, I think they're so good that I don't expect that to happen.
It's not a wheel that would have to fall off to have them mid-pack.
You would
need
a lot 3 of wheels, and then you're just like skidding on metal and whatever down the highway. But that's the only way, other than major injuries, which obviously we don't root for any team. Mm-hmm. That's the only way I could see this team potentially falling apart this year, and not at least being. They, to me, feel like a lock for conference finals at a minimum, unless something goes crazy wrong.
To Kyle's point, next year, not this upcoming one, but 2025-26, they're projected to have a salary of $225 million with a luxury tax bill of $280 million. They will be the first $500 million team.
What were the Lakers sitting at? Man.
Lakers?
No, the Lakers for the Warriors.
Yeah.
What were they sitting
It was just a different luxury tax back then. It wasn't nearly as punitive. This is the first major spender.
And they were definitely willing to continue to do that.
Yeah, they were. I think there were a couple $100 million, but not $500 million.
Wow. Jeez. All right. Well, we need to talk about it. Sixers can take them down. Look at some of the other teams in the East and some of the teams out West as well, as the Sixers are trying to make sure that after all the moves they've done this offseason, are they good enough to win the championship? Vegas and Bet365 has them at third best odds in the entire NBA. Are they worthy of that spot? We'll discuss it more when we get back here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast.
First up, we want to make sure we tell you about Empire today. If you're like me, home improvement projects are something that frequently look daunting. So if you need something to make the task just a little bit more manageable and flooring is something on your to-do list, Empire Today is a place that you want to turn to. With Empire Today, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. Empire Today keeps shopping for floor simple with a curated product selection. Their philosophy is to help you find what you need, not to overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in. Empire's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles. And Empire Today has a virtual floor designer, which is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy. Just snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. Shopping for floors at a big box store can be frustrating. You might talk to someone today who was working in plumbing yesterday. Flooring is all Empire Today does. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice. They also service their own warranties. With Empire Today, you won't have to track down a manufacturer's phone number. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/PHLY for details.
Well, gang, fall allergy season. We've been warning you about it for quite a bit now. I've been the victim of it for the last week or so, sneezing all over the place. My nose is running.
Same.
The culprits are everywhere. There's ragweed, there's mold, there's plants, there's dust mites, there's pet dander. I mean, you guys have seen my beautiful English bulldog, Louie. He likes to shed a little bit, and when that pet hair gets in the air, man, bad things can happen. Allergic reactions occur when your body misidentifies a substance like pollen as harmful to the body, and your immune system then releases histamines to fight those off. That's why antihistamines, medication that suppresses the amount of histamines in your body, are often the first line of defense to treating your allergy symptoms, like that runny nose, like that itchy or watery eyes, like wheezing. There's always all kinds of stuff going around. Also, too, it's back to school season, right? And so people that were not by themselves, but at home with a small group of friends, now you're getting thrown back into an environment with hundreds, if not thousands of people at times. So you're right on top of each other. You're going to Eagles games. You're at the tailgate today, like a lot of people on Monday Night Football. You have to keep track of and fight against fall allergy season. So look, I want you to sign up for Rite Aid rewards emails at riteaid.com/rewards. That'll get you email pollen alerts for your area. Some other ways to get relief during allergy season: use a dehumidifier. Those are huge. You should do this regardless, but shower frequently. Wash that pollen away. Get the mold spores away from your skin and hair. They're less likely to affect you. And of course, your local Rite Aid has over-the-counter options like a nasal rinse so you can flush out your nasal passages. And when your symptoms are flaring up, you know that pollen counts are high. So try some antihistamines. And 1 to 2 weeks before pollen allergies are expected to be high, you can try, and let's see how badly I butcher this word, nasal corticosteroids, like fluticasone is what it's, or it's available in a Rite Aid brand. I don't know how close that is, but I do have the curse of hoagie mouth over here. So if that's still not enough relief, ask a Rite Aid pharmacist if a different type of allergy medication, like a decongestant, might be necessary for you. Always ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for recommendations on ways to get relief during allergy season. There you go.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Kyle. I
had a runny nose and
wet
eyes last week for a different reason than allergies as well, but hopefully that's all behind us.
Right, they had the tissues for you. All good.
They did have plenty of tissues. I made a couple of trips to Rite Aid to stock up my house and my my extended family's hotel rooms and things they're staying in. We were on lockdown.
Absolutely. All right. For the Sixers, Kyle, how do they unseat this Boston Celtics team that we look at? The odds are so good for them to defeat, or at least to start off the season as defending champions. But for the Sixers, a lot of high hopes, of course, for this team to make a deeper run. Maybe some are satisfied with just a conference appearance. Some, like myself, feel like they need to get to the NBA Finals. So how do they unseat them?
It's an interesting question, and I think it comes down to a couple simple planks, right? Like, I think Joel has to be the best version of Joel that he's never been against Boston on a consistent basis in the playoffs, right? Like, if you go back to the 7-game series they had a couple of years ago, Game 5 on the road in Boston, him and Tyrese were awesome. And that is going to be what's required for this team to get past them, because James Harden had a couple monster games in that series.
I actually think his Game 5 was underrated.
Yeah, you always like to talk about that's a good floor game for James. But obviously, the Game 1 performance with Joel still out due to injury. James carries them all game and down the stretch.
That game was nuts.
Shout out to Paul Reed as well for the made free throws in the final minute. And then it was game 4, right, where they had lost the MVP presentation game. The next game, it's hanging in the balance. Joel had some, bad turnovers, bad plays down the stretch, and Harden came through big time yet again. So they don't have James Harden. Like Paul George might have a big game. He might have multiple big games, but I do think the key to beating that team is Joel's got to beat up Kristaps Porzingis.
100%.
Joel has to be able to take it to old man Al Horford. Don't fall for, he's going to keep his hands back. He's not going to go for the rip throughs. You have to be the bigger and better guy. It is that simple. And when you're not, you have to make reads that are quick enough that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Drew Holiday and these other guys can't just wait and wait and wait and then, surprise double team. I want to see speed from him in that matchup. That has been the key when he's had big games against them in recent seasons. So that's number one. Number two, the other guys just have to shoot well, quite frankly, because Boston doesn't want to play one-on-one defense against Joel for the most part. Very few teams do want to play one-on-one against Joel, but it has been easier to double him and send aggressive help because of the Tobias Harrises of the world, because of even DeAnthony Melton, who was a good shooter when he was here, because he would have a 2-for-9 game, whatever it would be. And so they would be rewarded for that strategy of screw the role players. We're putting everything on Joel and he's got to figure it out. And so it's both sides of that equation. The final piece obviously is Tyrese has to be able to consistently generate pressure and leverage against those guys. I think last season we saw him truly turn the corner in this matchup. Historically, Boston has been a nightmare game for him. Not only did we see some good offensive performances last year, that one, actually, I think it was at the Chegg, which I'm wearing the sweatshirt today. We saw him put in a great defensive shift against Boston on the road last year in a national TV game. If he holds up on defense and if he can, attack switches with some real gusto, that's a big difference maker and a big key in that matchup.
Yeah, and you brought up Embiid against Porzingis, but Maxey's got to cook Porzingis too. Like as good as Derek White is defensively, and as many problems as he has given Maxey in prior years, that is a matchup and a deep drop that Maxey can get going against. So he has to have an exceptional series as well if they do meet. And Kyle's exactly right. Like your role players have to make shots because Boston will continue to remember when PJ Tucker came out and scored 11 points in the first quarter of Game 7? And
which people were laughing the night before. Wild. He was in the gym at 2 a.m. or whatever and just getting up shots so he can take nothing. Yes. And then he came out and lit the Garden on fire.
But even lighting the Garden on fire, Boston is not going to pivot out of their set defense. They're going to continue to abandon you in the corner. So if they're going to abandon, let's say Kelly, which is a prime person to abandon, he's got to make those shots or he's got to find driving lanes to make them pay. It's just that is a team that if you come out and you struggle with your perimeter shot, they will eat you alive. So I think those were the two highlights for sure.
And it's why Caleb Martin has been this key figure and was one of the key figures in that conference finals against Boston, because they said, well, Caleb Martin can't make all these shots for 6 straight games or whatever. Well, guess what? He did. And Miami won the series. So Boston under Joe Mazzulla, it's pretty straightforward how they want to play. They want to stop your stars and force other guys to beat them. If your role players can step up and rise to that occasion, you have a decent chance of beating them.
Yep. All right. The other Eastern Conference team that a lot of people are still trying to figure out if the Sixers or the Knicks are second or third in the East. They're currently, since Derek talked about the top 5, Denver is 4th behind the Sixers at plus 850. The Knicks are 100 behind the Sixers at plus 900 right now, according to Bet365. And as a result, of course, as we talk about this, again, a lot of people have them, Derek, trying to figure out who's best. Sixers and Knicks, who's a deeper team, who has the best starting 5. They both have done a pretty darn good job. New York, again, they get these starters, and Julius Randle coming back, making a trade for Kale, OG Anunoby returning. They push the guys who got to the second round and could have gotten to an Eastern Conference Finals if not for Jalen Brunson's injury against the Pacers. Those guys slide to the bench, and their bench is now really, really deep for what they have. The only issue for me that I look at is the Isaiah Hartenstein loss that put Mitchell Robinson right back in the starting role. But who's their backup five? Preston Achua, Jericho Sims. They're not good enough. Now, Robert Williams' conversation has been out there.
He's so injury prone.
Yes. And Robert Williams' conversation has been out there. Maybe Walker Kessler. Until that happens, though, this is who they have. They have a really good team. What do you feel the fact that they are right behind the Sixers at plus 900?
Yeah. And one real quick point to Kyle brought up earlier. You've got the Celtics at plus 300, and then you've got 6 teams between plus 750 and plus 1,000, really jumbled up in this range. And the Knicks are right there in that mix. And I think they should be in the mix. Like they should be right there alongside the Sixers. And someone in the chat, Ego Emmy Apologist, Apologetics. Yeah, there we go. Said that the...
Hey, I just said a bunch of words that are medical terms, so that's better than mine, I think.
He said the Sixers are better than New York, but New York is tougher. And I think that's probably a pretty...
And we mean physically
clean
tougher.
Cut. Yeah, sure. I think so. A lot of people would argue mentally tougher as well, or at least that they've proven more in that regard. But the Knicks are a little bit like a team, like the Sixers early on, where they overachieved. Everyone's still on a high that they overachieved, but that doesn't mean that they're a team without flaws. And I do think a little bit that when you get deep into playoffs, you're relying on Brunson that much to create half-court offense. I think eventually a team is going to be able to take advantage of that. And I think even after the acquisition of Bridges, there's still just a little lack of high-level creators on that squad that I think some team, now it might be more likely that's the Celtics that can take advantage of that than the Sixers, but I think some team is going to take advantage of that. I still think they are a little bit away, and maybe that piece is what they do with Randall eventually. But I don't think they're a perfect team, but toughness and physicality can make up for a little bit of that, especially when everyone's tired and injured in April and May. So they are certainly a threat. I do think the Sixers on paper are a better team, but the better team doesn't always win.
Well, real fast, the Julius Randle piece that you brought up, until they do get rid of him, he is a proven 2-time All-Star in that half-court set. We did not see him in the postseason to help out Jalen Brunson in that regard. Could that help them? That should be able to help them.
Yeah, so I think to build off of Derek's point, I do think the Knicks are like call them the safer bet. If I were to say, is it more likely that their flaw, who is it more likely that their flaws undermine them? You would say the Sixers, because their flaws are Joel's never healthy in the playoffs, and that's been more true than not, obviously. And the Knicks' flaws are they have to figure out what's going on with Randall, but also that they're playing primarily through a tiny guard. But the concerns with small guards come later in their careers, right? Like it's when they hit their early to mid 30s, the physical drop off is steep. Like we have Brunson is just kind of getting to that all NBA, even like MVP conversation type level. And he's got Anunoby back this year. And they got Mikal to help out with the creation, to space the floor, to take on tough defensive assignments, and to push some of those guys that maybe were like 1-2 spots in the rotation too high last year back into more of their natural spots on the team. So I do think there are fewer things that the Knicks have to figure out. The big man situation is a big one. I do think if they draw the Sixers especially, that's going to be a key thing, because you can't be going in there with Precious and Jericho Sims and guys like that. Mitchell Robinson, I think, can do a good job on Joel, but beyond that, it's Mitchell Robinson's not playing 40 minutes or whatever it's going to take to do that.
Especially because New York just hasn't shown the creativity that someone like Boston does to help on a mismatch.
Yes.
Boston is so good at showing Joel help and disguising that help and changing it up. New York kind of runs vanilla, and they just get really good at it, and they just haven't shown the kind of creativity.
Just give me a cool 18-20, cuz that's all I need you to do in that offense, and we'll worry about everything else later on. Real fast, over the weekend and back to the end of last week, they did sign 2 former Sixers to Exhibit 9 contracts, Landry Shamet and Marcus Morris. Moment of the day, both of them, Derek. One question in the chat, asking about this is PHLY, what are Exhibit 9 contracts? Not the Exhibit 10, what are the Exhibit 9 contracts? And does that do anything for both of those players on that team?
It's just a training camp invite with a non-guaranteed contract.
Yeah.
Whereas like an Exhibit 10 would give you like a small bonus so that you would then also, they get your rights if you sign with the G League. Exhibit 9 is just a straight non-guarantee.
Yeah. So I believe they essentially, those two along with, they signed Chuma Okeke, who we talked about on this show this summer.
One of your guys.
They signed him to, I don't think he was on an Exhibit 9. I think he's just on a non-guaranteed deal. So these two deals and the Okeke deal essentially put those three in competition for, end of the roster spot in New York. So we'll see what comes of that. I think if I had to guess based on if Tibbs has a say here, it'll either be the guy who people believe could be a two-way wing and turns him into a reclamation project in Okeke, or Morris because his, at least like the tough guy persona, if not the actual toughness, like who knows what Marcus has left to offer
in the
this
Taj
point.
Gibson role.
I think Marcus fits that like East Coast, just like might get in a fight with somebody type of veteran role player.
That being said, this is something that Devon can speak to directly. Can you still consider yourself a Philly guy if you're playing for the New York Knicks? I don't think he can. I think he lost all of his credit. He comes back to the Rump Classic next year. I think that's got to influence how he's perceived.
Man, when Jalen Brunson was here, nobody cared in the Rump Classic.
I cared.
In the Rump Classic?
Well, I wasn't there.
All right. We need to talk about the rest of these teams that are on this list, the top 10 that we have for the graphic. Boston, New York, we already took those teams down and talked about how they fare against the Sixers. We do need to talk about, should they get to the Eastern Conference Finals and advance, the teams that they might play in the Western Conference Finals for the NBA championship. We'll do that when we get back here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. And if you're looking to save some more money, the holiday is coming up, right? And you start to look for these things early. Get the gifts. Hey, girls, my daughters, tell me what you want now so I can start to get this stuff out of the way. Get it done early. And I want to make sure my funds are correct when I do that. And I would love to do that with my great friends at TrueMark Financial and also with their Rewards Visa credit card for our travel. Might have to get one for the guys when we go to the Bahamas here in a couple of weeks for training camp to make sure we have our stuff situated. Earn rewards for each purchase using TrueMark Financial's Rewards Visa credit card and redeem them for travel and retail gift cards as well. Build your credit through timely payments and low credit utilization. Enjoy fraud protection with features like zero liability. I have one of my friends about to go on a 2-week trip across the water. Hey, you need this card. Fraud protection. Make sure you're good. Zero liability on you, especially, be dealing with a great financial institution like this. Traditional savings account. Once again, as you try to make sure your funds are right for the holiday season, Basic Savings Account offers a place to deposit funds, earn interest, withdraw money as needed. If you're looking for a money market account that combines features of savings and checking accounts as well, offering higher interest rates and limited check writing capabilities, easy access to your money when you do, in fact, need it. So if you're looking for a new financial institution with all of the things that we just laid out for you, fits your lifestyle and your family's, TrueMark Financial is it. Federally insured by the NCUA and is an equal opportunity lender. For more information, visit truemark.com/PHLY. And as we talk about the Sixers and their title odds, you know where we got those odds from? We've been telling you from our great friends, the presenting sponsor here, of course, Bet365.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Never ordinary. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide. Bet365 has live streams, 780,000 events each year, early payout offers across the NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB. And with the game tonight, let's go back to the first game, across the water against Green Bay. I took the Jamie Lynch Bet365 parlay that he put together.
Our gambling master around
got
here.
it done.
It.
The three selections that he had, I got it done. And you know what? When they talk about the payout early, it was right there as soon as things went down immediately and paying my money right as we wanted by tailing Jamie on that selection. So Bet365 pioneered live in-game betting. So tonight, got one key player out on the wide receiver side for Philadelphia with him being out. And you want to look at the other players and said, you know what? This team is hot. This guy is hot right now. He's getting every look from the quarterback. Bet365 is that for you. Again, Bet365 offers the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. And right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Use code PHLY365 to sign up, deposit $10, and place a bet for $5 to get $200 in bonus bets. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Make sure you get in there. Bet365. It's fantastic, and you get those parlay boosts in there as well. It's always fun. How you feeling, guys, about tonight? What are you feeling? Feeling pretty good. By the way,
I'm feeling like an Eagles W. That's what I'm feeling. And apparently I'm not allowed to eat lemon pepper wings anymore. I'm having a conversation with Real Time in the chat who says there's way too much salt in the lemon pepper. I don't know.
Right.
Well, maybe you got them from the wrong place.
By the way, you must be 21 and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Make sure you don't have that problem. All right.
Lou Williams just getting real pissed off at the chat right now.
Winona said, "What's your address? I keep trying to send y'all wings." Winona, are you just sending them into
random wings?
The Phantom Zone? They're just like, I don't know, just somewhere in Philadelphia. Somebody's house is just like they show up, they come back from work, and it's like, why do I have this damn platter of wings sitting on my front stoop? Man. What happened here? Winona, we'll work on that at some point. You do not need to send us anything at all, let alone chicken wings.
Get that W tonight, folks. Make sure you get that W.
That being said, if you were going to send us something, chicken wings would be very high on the list.
Yes.
And if you do want to check out tonight for the pre and post pregame, the official party, the tailgate party is the best in the city. And it's going to be at Uptown Beer Garden tonight. Jamie Lynch, Roy Burton, and Rich Hoffman I saw is going to be there. The three-man team.
Look at that.
For the pregame, and then postgame, you have Bo, along with Jamie, Vinny Curry, Fran Duffy, Zach checking in from the stadium.
Hopefully with better internet connection than from Brazil.
So. I would hope so. I would hope so. So make sure you tune in for the tailgate, of course, tonight before the game, and then post-game. Make sure you tune in. The only place to get your post-game coverage right here on PHLY Eagles here later this evening. All right, let's look at the rest of the odds across the league. As we talk about the OKC Thunder, Kyle. Adding Isaiah Hartenstein that we talked about.
Yes.
Caruso, adding him. The team that they just simply brought back everybody.
I was going to say,
top five
it's
candidate.
just the continued growth of all these guys who are like 23 years old.
With some vets that have done things in the postseason. Hartenstein with the Knicks, Caruso with the Lakers, helping them win the championship, the bubble season. The team is darn good, man. So that's why they have them second there. But only plus 750. Again, as Derek pointed out, look at the separation from Boston and everybody else. But they are number one in the West, even in front of the Denver Nuggets, who are fourth.
Yeah, and so OKC ended up as the number one seed last year. There's a lot of jostling at the end of the season. The Nuggets, coming off their finals run, said, and how much you want to lend credence to this, I don't know, but said publicly after the season, and I know we're saying privately while the season was ongoing, they felt that they spent so much trying to battle for that one seed that actually compromised them for the playoffs, that they spent too much trying to keep up with them. And so I think the Thunder they have all the young legs, they got the reinforcements, they have no real reason to be like, well, they're going to take a step back, right? Like all signs are trending upward. So I'm expecting them to be a pretty comfortable one seed if things go right for them. The reason that I don't think they're closer, and they are kind of in this pack of them, the Sixers, the Nuggets, the Knicks, is because they're young, right? Yes. Like they have not proven that they can go on that deep run. Like Luka and the Mavericks, who are a little further down at, I believe, plus 1,000, he has now led not just a finals appearance, but they've gone to multiple conference finals. He's proven capable of being just this all-consuming force on offense when push comes to shove in the playoffs. And he has Kyrie. You've got the role players now between PJ Washington, the drafted Derek Lively, will be there for a long time. And so Oklahoma City just has to make that next step. And as we learned in Philadelphia the hard way, that next step is hard and it is not guaranteed. And while I have pretty high confidence that they're going to be able to continue marching forward, you really just never know. Like, one thing could go wrong. Maybe somebody gets hurt. Maybe, I mean, Jalen Williams was not that good in the playoffs last year relative to expectations and his regular season performance. Chet Holmgren still filling out his body. And so they have to now navigate, okay, how often do we use Chet as the lone big, which was essential to last year's identity? And how much do we want to play him and Isaiah Hartenstein? So there's a bunch of little things they have to figure out, but I think they absolutely deserve to be right there in that inner circle, right below, well, not right below, but close to the Celtics as anybody else is. And the big question is just, how much do they leap forward and how big of an impact do the new additions make? I think Caruso over Giddey is an absolutely, maybe not for the regular season, because Giddey can be, an innings eater, ball handler. In the playoffs, I think Caruso will make a massive difference. We've already seen him, and he was not as good as he is now. We saw him as part of a finals team, was very helpful in LA's bubble run years ago.
They are the best and the deepest team in the Western Conference, and I don't think it's really all that close. There are two reasons why you wouldn't necessarily pick them to go to the finals. One, they're young, they've never done it. And two, there's two other MVP caliber players right there who have done it. So that is really why, if there's skepticism, it would mostly be around that. I do wonder, as I've wondered for like 3 straight years, when Presti finally decides to make his all-in trade, if he ever decides to make an all-in trade, and how that would shake up that roster and maybe the chemistry, and also how much talent they would add to that, because they have so many draft picks and so much flexibility that they can add. But I do think they are, like I said, the best, deepest, most talented team in the Western Conference. I don't think it's particularly close. It's just their top guy hasn't done it, and 2 other top guys right there in the West have, who you expect to be right there with them. And the Nuggets right behind them at plus 850, and then the Mavericks at plus 1,000. So that the skepticism would only be because of that.
The fact that they did what they did, and unfortunately for them, of course, losing in that second round, but to add Caruso and Hartenstein, as Kyle said, to not have to give up anybody and bring up those 2 proven guys in the postseason, a great fit. That's a really good fit. And when they get to the playoffs and he's, in somebody's jersey who can score on the perimeter for whatever team that might be, or let's just say it's somebody like the Lakers and they have to play, Russell has a good game and all right, go get him and lock it all up because of how good that guy is. And helps out Lou Dort, who's also a really good defender on the perimeter if he's not in some trade. That's going to be a big, big problem for whatever perimeter player that is out there, that he's going to be able to give them some fits. Some good stuff there from Jay talking about Chet Holmgren. I can't wait to see what that looks like with those 2 guys, he and Hartenstein, when they are in the lineup together. And Jay says Chet, he's going to be tough and nasty this year. And then a great one from Martian. Chet Holmgren is pre-Malone, not post-Malone.
Martian's always got some kind of nonsense to share with the chat. I would say this as we talk about OKC and we're moving into the rest of these Western Conference teams. I think the West is going to be almost exclusively decided by matchups. Like I think the Thunder are now better positioned against Denver, right? Like I think Denver last year looked at Oklahoma City as a team like, we hope we can draw them in the playoffs because we think Jokic versus, Chet and the other Jalen Williams, like he will eat them alive. But as we saw last year, Minnesota is basically engineered to beat Denver, right? Like they are set up to guard Jokic and deal with him. And then Ant-Man goes crazy, and that's kind of their path to getting there. Now, Dallas in the next round, Luka just was Luka, and having him and Kyrie in a series where the most important defender on the other team is Rudy Gobert, and he's not, you don't want him stepping out and defending 2 like great perimeter players who are dynamic ball handlers, finishers, scorers, whatever you want to call them. So I think so much of this is going to come down to how does the bracket set up? And so it'll be one of those where it's at the end of the season and you might see some pretty aggressive tanking from some teams. You might see a few teams really aggressively going for it. I would say I'm a little surprised that the Nuggets are by themselves in the West above Dallas and Minnesota. Like I think Oklahoma City deserves to be that, not a runaway favorite, but a favorite out of the West teams. I think the others are just about even. I think Denver pretty clearly got worse this offseason. I think losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a big deal. I know even in Denver, they're not necessarily enamored with all their young guys that now have to step up into these bigger roles. People are really only talking themselves into Russell Westbrook because of Jokic. And that really is like the underlying statement or assumption to put Denver there, is that like, yeah, all this stuff has happened, but Jokic is probably the best player in the world, or he's at least in the conversation at a minimum. And so all those losses, all that stuff, he'll figure out a way to solve it and work around it. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's possible. He is that level of player at this point, has earned that respect to be in this conversation every single year, no matter what the team is around him. I think the big thing this year, and this could just decide the whole season, not just for the Nuggets, but the whole league. If Jamal Murray is Jamal Murray from the finals run, they go from you're like a plus 850 to you're probably much closer to Boston than anyone else. If Jamal Murray is who we saw in the Olympics or close to the guy we saw like the back half of last season, they have no title equity. Yeah. I just don't see a path for them if he's not the guy that he was when they won the title.
There's been so much attrition with their role players that they rely on their big four now a lot. And some of those players, like Murray, like Porter Jr., have so many, injury concerns and or just variability in their play that any kind of there's just, do they have a pathway of being a title contender? Yes. That's why they're fourth best odds or whatever it is, second best in the Western Conference. And because Jokic is there, you can never count them out. But a lot of things are going to have to go right for them to really maximize that. Their margin for error has definitely dwindled over the last couple of years.
I keep waiting for Watson. Now Strother is going to be in that mix, and Brown.
They invested a lot of draft picks to try to rebuild that depth. It just hasn't panned out yet.
Yep. And as far as Minnesota being the team being built to beat Denver, the one thing that I would say they do have going for them is while Rudy Gobert could be an anchor, like a bad anchor, of course, there hanging on them as keeping them from doing it when they do have to adjust. If Towns and Reed can do what they're supposed to do in the front court to play that type of style, that more fast-paced shooting from the perimeter, defend well enough on the other end, because we did see Karl Anthony Towns defend pretty well at some points. And what was that series? Was it the Denver? It was the Denver series where he played really well against Nikola Jokic. That if he's able to do that with Reed and, of course, Anthony Edwards doing what he does on the offensive end, Jaden McDaniels doing his part, they may have a chance there. The Dallas, I want to see it. I want to see Najee Marshall in a deep playoff run, see how that plays out. Yes. Not having Derrick Jones there performing in the way that he did. But it's gonna be really interesting. So 6 through 10 is Dallas and Minnesota at plus 1,000. At 8, Milwaukee at plus 1,200, followed by the Lakers. Big time distance here. Lakers and the Suns both at plus 3,000, where Bet365 in Vegas are like, yeah, those guys are really way behind there. We'll worry about them later. But Milwaukee is the one team for the East that is in here with the Celtics, Sixers, and the Knicks. The other 6 are Western Conference teams. And the Milwaukee Bucks, it's still up in the air. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know.
We'll see what Glenn can do. I'm going to try to follow Devon's lead here and call him Glenn.
Or Rivers, either one.
Well, so this is I brought this up to you prior to the show, Devon. And shout out to, we have a Lakers fan or someone who said go Lakers in here earlier. Right. BC was coming through. And I always appreciate when we get fans of other teams and they're just respectful and not yelling at people. Yeah. Like we always like to hear from other people. You can count on BC.
BC is a long time.
Yeah. So BC, thank you for coming through. Yeah. I would say this. If I were putting money on one of the Bucks or the Lakers to win the title, I sure would rather have the Lakers title odds than the Bucks title odds, because I continue to be a huge skeptic and a huge doubter of the Bucks. I think obviously it's a lot to ask for LeBron and AD to stay healthy all throughout the season. LeBron being as old as he is, AD, again, it's not quite the Joel thing, but it's constant nagging injuries. They can never quite get him to the finish line whole. But when you saw them in the Olympics and you see like where LeBron is still at, where Anthony Davis is at right now defensively, like I actually think he's underrated at times defensively now, where prior to the last 3-4 years, when he was in New Orleans, it was like, oh, this guy should be the defensive player of the year every year. And it's like, no, he's good, but he's not quite at that level all the time. I think he's now close to that level all the time. And I think you put him in a playoff environment where it's a lot of 1 through 5 switching. That's when he becomes like an absolute world destroyer. And so if the other guys there can stay, like Gabe Vincent missed a lot of last year and they had all kinds of issues with the rotation last year.
Also, Vanderbilt was also injured.
Vanderbilt was hurt. Although I'm skeptical that he's going to be
just as far as a defensive,
just having that guy as an option, right? They do have a first-year head coach in JJ, so you don't know how that's going to shake out. But if I'm going to bet on anybody to exceed, kind of where they're at in the odds picture, I think they're a little underpriced at plus 3,000. Like I would move them more toward, let's say like plus 2,500, plus 2,000, somewhere in that range. Just because I will always give that respect to LeBron. I think until he's done,
100%,
until he shows that he is not at that level anymore. And he's not Heatles LeBron, but he's still all NBA, all-star guy you turn to in crunch time level LeBron. I bet on him rather than aging Dame Lillard. And unfortunately, Giannis is he's dealing with nagging injuries in the playoffs now.
And to your point, I think AD is pretty badly underrated in terms of a playoff defender.
Yeah.
Part of that is because he struggles against guys like Jokic or Embiid. So especially like locally, he will be underrated a little bit. But in the playoffs, he is one of the more consistent, one of the more impactful players who just completely changes the game defensively. I 100% agree, especially with when you factor in playoffs. He is underrated defensively. I wouldn't want to bet on either of those teams, but I do think when you start looking at those odds, plus 3,000 versus plus 1,200, I think they're closer to even.
Real quick, either of you, Kyle, start with you first, throw this on you. Any sleeper team not in the top 10 here that you
honestly no? Like I do think this group is so strong.
It is.
And a lot of them are so resistant to like, hey, they can absorb this guy has a bad season because the depth is really good. And that their depth will probably fall apart fairly quickly because of the second apron stuff. Like these teams are going to have to deal with, all right, do we give this guy a max or do we need to trade him before we get there? But I do think this is a pretty clear. I think it's like a top 8. I would move the Bucks out of that and maybe bump the Lakers up. But that's other than that, I think that's pretty ironclad.
Derek,
I did think the Pacers at plus 5,000, I thought they might get a little more love than that. I don't necessarily love that as a bet. I just thought they would be like maybe in the plus 3,000 range. But no, I think for the most part, Vegas tends to be pretty good at what they do.
Yep. They got it pretty right. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us as we start our season preview. We have a lot going on in here, and I saw somebody talking about the defensive player of the year kind of thing, no more for Rudy Gobert. You never know. We might talk about some of that stuff here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. So make sure you stay tuned all week long. Going into, as we get ready for training camp, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell another friend that we're also available to you on Roku TV. So now make sure you check in.
I reference that guy, I get killed in the chat.
As well. Yeah.
So
it's all about Derek.
It's all about Derek. Let's get to it. Our world famous roll call.
Yes. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Val Host who said just heading to Uptown
Have fun,
for the
Val.
watch party. Have fun over there, Val. Everybody go check it out if you can. If not, it's all good. We still love you. Just maybe a little bit less. But thank you to my girl, Winona. Thank you to Provolone John.
What up, Provolone?
Thank you to BC, the Laker fan.
BC, good to see you.
Checking in. What up to Martian Lynch? Devon Givens, who is that guy? We got PHLY. We got Bootzilla.
Boots.
Eugene Ross.
Who is
SB
taking
Cole.
calls at work watching the show.
SB Cole says, no more Rudy DPOYs. You're damn right, SB. You are damn right. PHLY in the building. Dan, McGlade, Jay, so many more people,
Jess,
guys.
We
Jess
saw you.
is in here. Real time, lemon pepper wings, buddy. We're going to have some together. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications when we go live. Hit the thumbs up. We'll be back tomorrow.
Go Birds.
We all silly like the mayor.